Gotta go. I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay, Bo. It's just me and you. And we'll wait. More after these messages. In a world where HIPAA compliance is a real thing.
It must suck to get that old. What was that? What were you doing?
You're back. I was just having a one-way conversation with Bo.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grendel and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
This is Abigail from Arthritis and Rheumatology in Atlanta, Georgia, and you are listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Thank you for the intro. I'm David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT, and joining me is Donna Grendel of Carden. Good morning, Donna.
How you doing, David? How was your trip?
Just perfect. It was good, actually. Went out to the left coast. You know, the whole time I'm there, I'm like, please don't let the big one hit. Because I'm actually reading the articles, like on the plane, it's like, we're overdue for a biblical scale flood in California. And I'm like, it'll happen while I'm there. You watch.
Yeah. We're overdue for a lot of things, you know? So,
yep. But it was interesting. I went to places that, you know, people would go when they go to that area. And I was like, where's all the people? Man, it's like, yeah, talking about sheltering in place. They were sheltered.
yeah, they've had some big outbreaks down there. So California is still trying to manage stuff.
Yep. So, you know, it's good for a tourist, you know, because not a lot of things were standing in my way.
Yeah, you could go anywhere you wanted to go. Just don't go inside anywhere.
Well, a lot of places there was no going inside. A lot of things shut down. Restaurants surprisingly were open, but everything was completely outdoor seating. There was no indoor, not even separated indoor. It was outdoor and that was it.
Yeah, they've had it hard there. So how was the visit with your son?
Oh, it was fantastic. So, you know, we found a couple of things that we could do that we wouldn't be around other people. So we rented one of those Polaris slingshot vehicles. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, the 3-wheeled vehicle. Looks kind of like a Batmobile. So we rented one of those and just rode around for hours and hours and hours, and just cruised around everywhere we could find to go. We went, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, so didn't really stop and get out and do much, but just, you know, no top on the thing, just cruised around. And so interesting side fact is that the GTA 5 game, I think it's called San Andreas or something like that. But anyway, it's the map in the game as you're driving around committing crimes. the map is built off of like the Los Angeles and Hollywood and all that area. There's a bunch of stuff that is built around, and I didn't realize it. And I don't know that my son did because he plays the game a lot. Apparently the online version is kind of different than the story mode. But a lot of the landmarks that are actually in California are in the game.
Oh, cool.
And they're very accurate. And so I've played the game some with my sons. And so there was one part where we turned down this road and I'm like, this looks awfully familiar. And I'm like, I think I know where I'm at. And so we keep driving, and sure enough, we end up at the same place that you do in the video game.
And you're like, I'm living the game.
And I'm like, this is kind of weird. I should break into somebody's car. But anyway, so we did that, and then another day we rented some wave runners to go out in the ocean and ride these wave runners, which is fun. But the interesting part is the whole time I'm there, the temperature never gets above 70 degrees.
Burr.
So we go out in the morning, like at 10 o'clock in the morning, on the ocean. It's 65 degrees, I think, maybe less. The water is like maybe 50 degrees.
That's why everybody wears a wetsuit.
We are freezing our butts off out there riding these wave runners and getting soaked. And of course, you know, I'm going crazy on mine, flip it over, throws me in the ocean. We're a mile away from the beach. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking for Jaws any second. I don't know what's more terrifying, the fact that I'm in nearly freezing cold water or, what's swimming around me, because that's,
Yeah, you don't like the ocean. We've talked about that.
No, I don't like not being able to see what's around me. And I didn't have that fear until I was 15 years old and I went to Hawaii, and I'm out in the ocean and you can see everything. And I'm like, oh, look at all this stuff around me. And I'm like, people, they don't realize how much is around them. And I've been on the pier before down in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach. And I see sharks swimming fairly close to people and they don't realize it because you're looking down on them. You can see more than they can see. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I've even had a shark swim between me and my wife standing in knee deep water.
Did you run?
I did. I ran.
And left her out there?
I was like, look, I ain't got to be as fast as her. I just got to be out of here. So I'm screaming and running at the same time. And she's like, wow, you just left me out here. I'm like, no, you didn't run as fast as I did. Don't let her fool you. She would leave me out there too.
I know, right? It's not like it's only one way.
No, we were at a fireworks show one time and the fireworks fell over. It started going toward the crowd.
Oh my God.
And I kid you not, in the split second it took for us to realize what was going on, I turned to tell her to run. She was 100 yards away. Like, how she teleported is beyond me. But like, no, she's got. She
don't play.
No, when she kicks into self-survival mode, you're on your own. But anyway, yeah, good. It was a good trip. We had a good time. I enjoyed seeing my son and catching up and hanging out. So, yep, good times.
Good. I'm glad to know it. And he's what base is he at?
He's at Edwards.
Now.
Yep.
So that's awesome. So now you've been to Japan and you've been to California seeing them.
Yep. So I've been out of the country twice.
What it feels like these days. So,
yeah,
I'm
but
glad it went well.
I will say I saw the most interesting. I don't know if he was homeless or not. He looked homeless. He was on the sidewalk with a sign, but his sign indicated to me either he was not homeless and he was getting attention, or he was a big believer in truth in advertising. Not sure which. But as he sat on the sidewalk in his homeless attire with his big sign, it read, "I need money for Coke and hose." And so I don't know how many people helped him, but a lot of people were taking pictures of him because that is the most interesting sign I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's probably how he makes money.
It may be.
I saw that in Europe. I was in Frankfurt and, just walking in this big pedestrian area and there's this group of kids and they're like, got their little pans out with signs up. And one of them was like, I just need some pot. Something like that, is what he said.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting stuff. I hate that I missed like all the typical stuff that you see, like the sidewalk vendors and stuff like that. I think those were pretty interesting. And of course they weren't there. There was no reason they couldn't be there. But, we went to Santa Monica Pier.
There was no one there to buy things.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to Santa Monica Pier, like nothing. Like nothing's there. I think there might have been 30 people on the entire pier. Nobody's on the beach. It's just crazy. It was apocalyptic. So anyway, speaking of changes,
yeah,
HIPAA, depending on where you're from.
That's right.
There are some changes coming.
Well, there's some been alluded to, but I'm still, we talked about this around the end of 2019, decades ago. And it feels like anyway, because that's when they put out the request for information about making potential changes. And wow. Since then, they've had to make a lot more. They've been working on some other stuff, but I watched the interview that Tim Noonan did with the Information Security Media Group. There was an interview, and there was a lot in it, and I was like, oh, I should tell people to listen to this. And then I went, you know what? There's a lot of stuff they're talking about that other people may not truly understand what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should cover it.
Sounds like an episode to me.
So that's what I decided to do. I made some notes, and there you have it.
All right. So that will be our topic for today. And I guess I should give a spoiler alert that HIPAA's not going away.
No, we're not going to tell you that. No.
So if you think that's the change, no, it's not going anywhere. The election's not going to have anything to do with it. Like I hadn't heard that this election. Have you heard that yet? Because last election, that's all we heard.
Yeah, it's going to be gone. They're going to get rid of it.
Yeah, it's going away.
Yeah, it didn't happen. So we got a couple of other little quick things that that I want to hit on before we do our main episode, but there's a lot to cover, so I guess we better get to work.
All right. So what do you want to cover before we get into our main
Do we
episode?
need to pay bills first?
All right. So let's pay the bills. Let's hear a word from our sponsors.
Are you frustrated with your current IT provider? Are you sure you're getting the security and protection you need? Are you putting your patients and your practice at risk? If you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, give Security First IT a call to learn more about how they can protect your patients, your practice, and your bottom line. Find them online at securityfirstit.com or call 980-288-5100.
The number of medical practices that think they're HIPAA compliant is pretty staggering. Effective privacy and security are an ongoing process, not a checklist. And that's why at Cardin, they don't just assess your situation and leave you with a report, but they work with you all along the way. Call Cardin today at 678-292-5001 or visit them on the web at cardinhq.com. Aren't your patients worth it? All right, we are back. All right, go ahead, Donna. What you got?
Well, OCR sent out a thing this week letting us know there is another awareness month that we almost missed.
I'm glad that you and I are on the same wavelength here on this one.
Yeah.
Because I was like, what? When did this happen?
Yeah. These are things I learned. So when we learn something, we love to share it. And a big monthly celebration that apparently, unbeknownst to me, September is National Insider Threat Awareness Month.
Yeah, that we learn, as we're already into September.
That's right. It's the second annual, so I guess they're still working on how they promote it. But I did not also know that we had a National Insider Threat Task Force.
You never heard of the NIT? Yeah,
NITTF.
It's got to stink whenever you're part of a task force that you can't get a cool name for.
I know, right?
The acronym can't spell something cool.
Yeah, NITTF. Well, we'll work on that. I still like human-operated ransomware, our acronym, but it gets frowned upon the way that we handle it. But again, we didn't know about that. We'll be watching for that. Maybe by the 5th year, we'll get somewhere with it because after years of trying to be prepared for the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we're finally prepared for that. I was not prepared for another awareness month to be dropped in our lap. But the good news is this year, we're going to use the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We're going to follow it week to week. We're going to do it the week before so we can say, okay, next week, this is what's happening. Mm-hmm. And we're going to share that with you so then you could use it. Please share it with others so that it's readily available. So we'll educate you about what's the next week's subject. We'll be a week ahead, but that'll give you tools that you can use with your organization or, even your fam.
Yep. And stay tuned. Next September, we'll be doing the National Insider Threat Awareness Month in 2021.
Yeah, we'll have to learn about that thing. They had some cool links, but, I I don't know. We got to learn about the task force and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of parts of CISA. The cybersecurity, information security, I don't know. We never get that right. CISA. They the folks that watch after the cyber in the Department of Homeland Security. And another quick note is the FBI and CISA, they made a big release. OCRs followed it that they're saying that there is a surge in voice phishing, which is vishing, that's targeting employees who work from home.
Yeah.
And these folks are going to a lot of trouble because when they do it, they get a lot of things. And when they went through what they're doing, you wouldn't believe it. And this is where people always say to me, why don't people get a real job? I was like, this is their real job. Okay, so their real job is that they actually go through and learn all about employees. So they set up a fake domain that looks like the company's VPN login page because they stumbled upon it. And then they use public information, social media, all this. They create a dossier of all your employees from social media platforms. I tell you how important that is. Recruiting information, marketing tools, background checks. All this stuff is cheap, freely available so that they can find the perfect victims, their home address, their home telephone numbers or cell phone numbers, where they are, the position at the company, and their length of employment. And once they have all of that, then they can start spoofing numbers and all this stuff so that your employees think they're getting a call from within, the calls from within the house. It's coming from within the house. We just did that not too long ago. So they call them up and they say, I'm working with IT. We're going to send you a new link to log into the VPN. They're very nice. They're polite. We're going to stay on the phone with you to make sure you have no problems.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. And even so far as to at the point that you go to the fake page they sent you and you log in and it asks you for your two-factor authentication and it intercepts it right then and there. And then they're able to immediately log into your network. So, and in our last couple of episodes where Gary was talking about how quickly they can pivot and move laterally, And the sad thing is all the training and stuff that we do for phishing doesn't help us when they're actually on the phone. Training about grammar and typos and, all that goes away.
Oh, yeah.
If you speak fairly, understandable English, people get excited about it. You're IT and you're going to use phrases and, IT, I don't know how we're going to handle it other than we go to that military challenge word password thing.
Right.
So you hear the text whispering, their code. So you'll hear paradise, toilet. Those are my favorites I came up with. Paradise, toilet.
Yeah, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. The whole idea is they're not supposed to. So you'll have the word of the day. But anyway, I think it's important that we start to figure out how we're going to handle that because we're starting to make, it's the same thing that always happens. We start to make progress in one area. So then they just pivot to a new way because they're making a boatload of money, people. I saw that in second quarter, the average ransomware payment was up to like $178,000, 100 and something. It's a 6-digit number, people. That's the average payment. So they're making a boatload of money, and apparently there's a lot of these cases. But
yeah, it's
those are my two let's talk about before we get started things.
You do have to wonder kind of on a similar topic, when you have these uncertain times and people are being laid off and all that, how many look at this and go, you know what? I typically wouldn't be doing this, but I got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And they start going down this path because it is so lucrative and it's not hard to do. And, I'm just wondering. I wonder if people see that as a viable form of income, whereas they wouldn't go knock off the liquor store on the corner, but, but they will get online and take advantage of somebody that way.
Well, it's just like everything else when it comes to the online stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
can be evil, nasty, horrible to people online. You'll see people just evil.
Uh-huh.
And I saw there was a podcast I listened to where the guy had his podcast or his vlog or whatever, and then he would pick the people that are just vile towards him in the comments. And he had another podcast where he would say it was called like Talking with People Who Hate Me. And he would call them up, and the vast majority of them ended up apologizing for what they said online, because in person, you won't do those things. And it's the same thing when it comes to online crime. It doesn't feel like you're doing any harm. Yeah. It's first of all, that second podcast pretty funny to listen to. So you said that I blah, 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 blah. Well, I just like to understand, and the guy's not doing it. He's literally wanting to find out why you feel this way, and so it's a pretty interesting thing. And the same thing goes for the criminals. When you look at that, I think that it's very viable that no, I wouldn't go, rob somebody, but I can do this computer crime. I'm not bothering anybody. Doesn't hurt anybody.
I ain't hurting nobody.
So, but then we get to the headline was proposal for HIPAA modifications coming by year's end. Interview with HHS OCR's Timothy Noonan on potential HIPAA changes and other agency initiatives. And it's a really good video interview. I encourage you to check it out if you're the HIPAA person and you're like us. It's very informative.
If you're like us, I'm sorry.
Well, all those terms and all the stuff, but if you don't spend your life eating HIPAA terms, a lot of that stuff I realized, because I'm like, oh, we'll just tell you. And honestly, I went back and looked at my notes and then listened to the other pieces again, and I'm like,
yeah,
that might not sound like English to everybody like it does to me.
Well, speaking of HIPAA terms, I spoke with somebody that was at the Bootcamp the other week, and she was like, after day one, I'm sitting there going, we need to go through this again. She said, by day two, I kind of got it, but day one is like, we need to review the entire day, which is way too much.
Well, that's what we tell them. Day one's the hardest one.
Yep.
Just get through it.
You're not ready for that fire hose.
Yeah, there's no way for us to better show you that we are not lying. It is boot camp.
Yeah. Well, we took an 8-week course and stuck it into 2.5 days.
Everybody's like, I don't have time to do this in 8 weeks. Okay, fine. Here you go.
This is what it looks like then.
But they did do this request for information and the open comment period. They were asking for input on various topics, and it closed right at the beginning of COVID madness. So their plan, which I was doing a presentation doing a webinar with a group the other day, and I went with, this is what we started the plans with. Weren't they cute? They were cute. Let's throw those away. But at the time, they had intended to compile the information from the comments and issue a notice of proposed rulemaking, which is the NPRM, if you're cool like us. But what they do is they publish these in the Federal Register, and they say, this is what we're proposing we're going to do. We're going to announce these rules. And it's the same thing we went through with high tech, where we had like the omnibus final rule, and they had the interim final rule and all this kind of stuff that they have to do. And so they had planned, by now they would have done the NPRM from that, is I think what they had hoped for. Now they're saying, we're going to get this done by the end of the year. Good luck. And I don't make any 2020 commitments anymore, other than what I'm doing right now and a little bit later.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know what tomorrow looks like.
I know, right?
I do know I'm off Monday.
It's just, you just say 2020, that's it. Sometimes though, these things, they'll publish them and it just goes, well, there's not a lot. And others, they're inundated with responses to the proposed rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to go back and whatever responses they get, they have to go back and review those. And then if you sat and read the omnibus final rule, because I did, right?
Of course. I mean, that was good bathroom reading.
No, I was all excited. I still keep my highlighted version that I turn to periodically.
I know. It's like the final rule.
So I know it's just wrong, but somebody's got to do it, and I at least I like it. So they hopefully this thing will come out before year end, and there won't be anything. As he said, we don't want to do anything that diverts attention from actual life and death situations surrounding the pandemic.
Oh, good.
He is very clear that this is what we focused on so far this year because that's what matters to the public. And we're here for that kind of stuff. Public health is, what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key for all of us, no matter what part we play in the healthcare industry, all of us are healthcare professionals when we're in a crisis. And that's ebbing and flowing and coming and going. So anytime that could derail this whole idea, but the idea is that they'll send it out. And regardless of when it happens, whether it's before the end of the year, right after, sometime coming out soon. And in it, there will likely be some sort of HIPAA changes based on the input. Because at the time, there were some really good ideas that were in there. And the one I think everybody was excited about was getting rid of the requirement for the patient's confirmation of the receipt of the notice of privacy practices. That thing you sign when you go to the doctor that everybody thinks HIPAA is, they never read. It's just paperwork. And, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
But
just post it somewhere and be done with it.
Yeah. That means that you better have your ducks in a row with all the things you're supposed to do besides that. And that means you have a current version posted prominently on your website. You have a current version posted prominently in all of your public areas or where patients can hang out and get it. And you have them readily available to hand to someone if they ask for it. Like I had a case where I had to ask for one because there was nothing. I was like, first of all, I'm just going to point out this is a violation. You don't have one out here. I would like to see it.
Yeah.
And then,
well, some people feel like that is HIPAA.
Yeah.
Like I've heard people say, oh, I got HIPAA covered. And I'm like, really, what are you doing? And they hand me the MPP. I'm like, okay. Well,
that's what Gary said. He said they go into these data breaches sometimes and it's that is the extent of their HIPAA.
Yeah.
There's a thing on the wall or in a frame somewhere and the paperwork. And if you're lucky, there's a binder somewhere with enter name here, policies and procedures. And this still happens.
Oh, yeah.
So there's, I would hope that if they get rid of that requirement, it's a positive thing, not a negative thing. Because what they'll then do is they'll start really enforcing, you have it posted, where the current one is. And, when we do an assessment, that's the first thing we do is go look at the websites and look for the MPP.
Yeah. Well, it does scare me that if people think that's HIPAA, what they're going to think is that HIPAA is now gone.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, they got rid of the MPP. We don't have to do anything. That's what scares me.
Well, that gets back to our education requirements. So what are you going to do? But in that RFI, and I know we talked about it in an episode, I just didn't take the time to go look for it. Besides the getting rid of that paperwork, they did a discussion on a part of high tech that, even in the boot camp, we say, we want you to know this exists because it could potentially become a true requirement. But right now it's not. And I would love to be able to say, it's gone. We don't have to worry about that. But it is part of high tech was that you had to do an accounting of disclosures that even included TPO.
Ooh.
can you imagine the database? Can you imagine just figuring out how to do the report?
Mm-mm.
Can you imagine all of the systems that would have to start sending logs into one area? I mean, this is a broad, you got all these different medical devices that we constantly talk about that have PHI. You would need to dump that in. You would need, I mean, there's a ton of stuff that would have to work together. And I think they've had like 3 or 4. They've had the Tiger teams and everybody looks at it and says, this is technically the almost not feasible without, choking a system that already has enough weighing on it.
Yeah. Reasonable and appropriate kind of goes out the window.
Yeah. And, to people who don't understand how things work, I'm sure to them that was like, oh, no big deal. No big deal. Yeah, I'm sure you can do it because we're going to put the logs in the EHRs.
Yeah. Just look at the log files.
Yeah.
No
But,
big deal.
to me, this says, okay, if they don't do this, this means we're going to have to start doing a better job monitoring what logs are being created and who is accessing things, which brings us back to the guys at Sphere that, I told them years ago, I thought you're ahead of your time, and they are. Back then they were. Now it's spot on that we need them.
Mm-hmm.
But the RFI also may have opened the floodgates because one of the questions they ask are, any provisions of the HIPAA rules that may present obstacles to these goals without meaningfully contributing to the privacy and security of protected health information and or patients' ability to exercise their rights with respect to PHI.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah. Yeah. That had to have been a floodgate because, now anybody could, and it was public, so anybody could say it if they knew it was out there. And there were a lot of other stuff, but, I was expecting to see a lot of things mentioned when this comes out because right before COVID, another thing that happened was the ONC rolled out their official interoperability rules, which gets back to the vendors not sharing the data and making sharing data very hard. And that, I think, it's going to be big. It's going to have a big impact because it's going to stop the vendors from being data blockers, essentially, because it's going to say, if you block the data, then you're going to get, if we determine that's what you're doing, we're going to fine you like $1 million or something. I don't know. Yeah. But it's definitely one of those things that it'll be interesting to see what all comes out of that. But interoperability and data sharing is a huge piece. And reviewing my notes, one of the things I noticed is that I had written down, sometimes when you're listening to something, you're making notes and there's some point that you want to make sure you remember that they talked about in a way that you don't want to forget. I had written down audit your patient access and then drawn a big circle around those words. Let's just say that if you should go listen to it, if you don't believe how important that is. I know I keep mentioning it, but it's time to get on board with that concept. He reiterated that or alluded to that, let's just say. And
so auditing that your patients are accessing their own medical records?
Well, you got both sides. Auditing that you are that patients are properly able to access their records, that you're not messing that up. Right?
Okay.
Because we had that whole initiative. Their initiative hasn't changed to make sure that patients have proper access to their records every time for a reasonable price in a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
And everybody needs to audit those policies and procedures and the charges. Even if you think you've got it, go document that you verified it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is something that they basically, they've had it.
Enough's enough.
Yeah. I mean, one of his points was that, we're going to keep doing this until we see a change in the industry. Because we tried to just tell everybody, and they did for years. They published this. It started in 2016 saying this is the way, even before that, but 2016 is where the big document came out that got everybody all 650 crap. But at that point, everybody got caught up in whether or not it costs $6.50 and not the fact that we want to make sure that patients get access to their records.
Right.
And you definitely need to make sure that you are auditing that patient access rights are not being screwed up at all outside the boundaries.
Right.
And we just talked about the importance of auditing the other way. But making sure that that's happening properly, and we've had many episodes actually where we've talked about what you're supposed to do, and go make sure that's happening. They're also really looking into how well providers are doing sharing information about patients, especially right now. They're getting a lot of that because some do it, no questions asked. They make it easy. That's the way it's supposed to do. They even say we expect that we will share within the industry information free of charge because that's what we have to do to function. And apparently the pandemic is making it stand out where that's not necessarily happening, because he did mention we want to know who's sharing it. It's going to be a priority on information sharing, which goes back to the interoperability thing.
Right.
So they're going to continue their patient right of access, but the implication is we're also, as soon as things settle down, going to really focus on information sharing. But the next one I had a note of, and I remember when he said it, I just stared at him and I thought through it in my head, and I'm like, yeah, that would happen. So a word cloud. It's where you take conversations and documents and you throw them into a program, and it calculates, how do you say this? It calculates what words are used the most, and the more often it's used, the bigger the word is. That's a word cloud, right?
Okay.
A lot of people don't know what they're called. Or
All right.
When they see them, they just didn't know what they're called. And he said that if you included all the HIPAA terms that they discuss in one big, huge cloud right in the middle, it would have the massive risk analysis.
Yeah, that is true.
And I thought about our review of those, how specific, we'll say, those settlement risk caps were when it came to the risk analysis. I was like, I wonder.
Yeah, that might be a kind of a warning.
Yeah. TikTok. He also discussed telehealth and the enforcement discretions. A lot of people are going, oh, well, this is just going to stay. And he's like, we're looking at it, but I don't know how they could leave that way without ditching the entire security rule.
Yeah.
With saying you don't have to secure the apps, you don't have to have a business associate agreement, you don't have to have any of those things. It seemed like a convoluted answer because there's no way that they can throw out the security rule. And how could they legally come out with a plan? And why would you want to, if we're moving more and more towards this, make it not secured?
Well, even when this came out, I was kind of hoping that they were going to put some type of expiration date on this.
Yeah. Well, when they came out, I'm sure they thought it would only be a couple months.
Well, even then, it would have been nice to say, we're going to lax this part of it until X date or something like that. Because as hard as it is to get information out, by the time some people even understand what's going on, how long is it going to take to then convince them, oh, that's not the case anymore?
Exactly. Yeah.
And of course, you and I have both preached from the beginning, like, don't do it.
Don't go down the path.
Do it. Yeah. Just do it properly. Don't go down the path of circumventing it because you're able to right now, because you're just going to create more problems.
Yeah. And at that time, we didn't have any idea how long it'd be going on. Now you're going to have to undo all those habits. 30 days is all it takes to make it a complete habit, right?
One time. Honestly.
You're right.
You know, my parents always said, don't do anything once you're not willing to do again and again. So,
True that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe in the future they may do that. I don't know that they will, but it would be nice to kind of, as they come out with things, they can always extend it, but by having that date on it in the front end, you're already telling people, look, this is not going to happen permanently.
Yeah. And they came out and said, this will expire. This will expire, but we don't know when.
Right.
And you're right. They should have said, we will review it every so many days, which is what they've had to do with the state of public emergency and all these other things. You're right. It would have at least said, look, this isn't going to stay this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when you tell me it's going to go away at some point, I'm like, so am I at some point.
Yeah, that's a way to look at it. And so the other thing I made note of is he stressed the importance of training. Would you believe that?
I don't understand why training even matters.
He pointed out that one of the primary breach issues they continue to see is email compromises related to phishing. He specifically said we should be training and testing employees about phishing. And another email-related problem that he mentioned was they're getting a lot of reported breaches where PHI is emailed to the wrong person. This is why there's a long list of reasons I'm not a fan of PHI in email. There are other ways.
Yep. Just don't even create PHI.
Just not an email.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a problem. And I always like to keep in mind that we're talking about reported breaches. I don't even know, maybe you know the number, but what percentage possibly is happening and not getting reporting? How many thousands of percent are happening and not getting reported?
Yeah, there's a lot there. In our conversation with Gary, all three of us were like, we don't even want to guess because of what we are aware of is scary. How much of that's going on.
Yeah. It's like, I'd love to see a study like for every one that's reported, we know that there's between X and X that aren't reported. It has to be a ton.
Yeah. And at some point, somebody's going to get caught and they will do you don't want to be in that position to be made an example of. Yeah, which is what he was saying when they talked about the enforcement. And he made it clear before, we're not going to divert from the fact that there's life and death going on, but we're also making sure that privacy and security are still there. We had to do a whole episode on it. Because, HIPAA privacy never left.
Nope.
Never. And the airlines can ask you why. Too many things that we had to go through there. Still having to go through it. But we've already seen they're not backing down.
No.
They are not backing down. They've gotten a lot of resolutions that they published that had to do with patient rights that weren't necessarily those related to HIPAA. Other patient rights that they have received complaints during the pandemic about problems, and then gone and resolved it and said, look, you're going to fix this, right? And they got it fixed. And, we know we're going to see it.
Yeah.
We see it happening pretty clear. He pointed out that in 2019 alone, they received over 500 major breach notifications, plus around 28,000 complaints. That doesn't even count the small breaches. This is why when the OCR investigators talk to the Bootcamp folks, they always say, don't worry, I'm not looking for more work.
No, they have plenty to do.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways they're going to find it. With that number, that was just 2019. That doesn't even account for the backlog they already had of unresolved things. And then you add to that they are able to pick and choose from there.
Mm-hmm.
As he said, they have no shortage of cases to choose from when it comes to enforcement.
Wow.
And he did also point out, which is something that the investigators have also told us, they do pay attention to the news.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So they go ask on their own if they see you in the news. Just keep that in mind. They pay attention to the news and they watch for things. And if they don't see it, they come asking. But he made a point of saying that the cases they choose to single out, unlike the FTC and some of these other folks, the cases they choose to single out involve either an egregious violation of privacy or systemic noncompliance failures that lets them know, and I thought this was the most interesting part, that leadership is not taking their obligations seriously. I was like, hello.
Yeah. Well, I think I can probably point to systematic noncompliance failures in a lot of places. And leadership not taking the obligation seriously, like HIPAA Schmippa.
Yeah. Well, and that's his point, I think, is a lot of people say, well, you know, I don't know why. I saw an interview with a guy that was one of the recent fines, and we just settled to make it go away. I don't know why they kept doing this. It was different people. It was years ago. We fixed it. But clearly, they still don't think that leadership is taking this seriously. And that was probably because the attitude of, I don't understand why you're not just letting this go. Because they say, don't mess with us. They pay attention to your attitude.
Yes, they do.
Yes. So our HIPAA changes coming. The proposed rulemaking will include changes. Do we know what they are? No. I would expect that we'll see the NPP paperwork go away.
Yeah, but not HIPAA.
Not HIPAA. No.
Just to be clear.
No. They may make some specific statements about risk analysis.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, all of those folks that are just running that little report, we're talking to you. That is not a risk analysis.
You HIPAA made easy people.
And he did point out, you have to know all the places that your PHI exists in order to protect it.
Yeah, that's the first step in the cybersecurity framework, by the way.
Yeah. Know what you have to protect.
Yeah.
Anyways, those were the things I got out of it. We have a link to it. You can find it just by searching for Tim Noonan interview, HIPAA changes, whatever. It is very interesting. You should listen to it. But for those of you who will say, we're going to have to just do that over again. I know who you're talking about. She cracks me up. When I see her head just go to her hand.
Yeah.
But they want you to show that you take it seriously. If you take your responsibility seriously, that's what they're asking. That's it.
Yeah. But, you know, don't just tell me, show me.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't believe somebody that just said, oh, yeah, we got HIPAA covered.
Yeah.
Because you can't. We've seen it too many times.
Anytime I hear that, I already know without doing anything else that you have an egregious case of systematic noncompliance. Just that one thing alone. I mean, I don't know. I know there's probably somebody out there that can say that and be honest and accurate with it, but that's the 1% of the 1%. Because honestly, I think if you really understand HIPAA, then you know not to make that statement.
Yes, you're right.
You know that, you know, I'm doing what I believe is right, and I think I've got it all done. I'm sure there's room for improvement. That might be your answer. Your answer is not, I got HIPAA covered. That's no.
It should be something like, we're constantly evaluating our program because we take HIPAA seriously.
Yeah.
There you go. Or we take privacy and security seriously, for that matter. Leave HIPAA out of it.
Yeah. I mean, we have the same conversation around security when we're talking to prospects, and we get the same response. It's like, we ask them a question about, how seriously do you take security? And they're, oh, we got security covered. Okay. I know based on that response, you have nothing covered. You've got some antivirus program that you got for free or whatever. Yeah. But no, I mean, your response should be something like, well, I think we've got things done. This is what we're doing, but we're always open to looking at it. If you're willing to look at it, please look at it. If there's something we're not doing right, we want to know.
Yeah.
Because it changes rapidly. I mean, if you're not doing IT security every single day, cybersecurity every single day, then you have failures everywhere. Because even those of us that are doing it every day still have a hard time keeping up.
No. And preaching to the choir.
So anyway, that is our show for today, folks. So remember to follow us, share us out on your favorite social media site, rate our podcasting app. As always, we need your help to spread the word. Let everybody else know. There's no PP in HIPAA. And remember, for Donna and myself, the HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grendel and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grendel or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.